special show right here on ET Now. The standoff between the executive on one hand and the judiciary on the other seems to continue because the Supreme Court Collegium deferred its decision at the meeting called to consider the reiteration of the choice of elevating the Uttarakhand Chief Justice K.M. Joseph. They've decided to not just reiterate that, they've also decided to send in more names from other high courts for elevation to the country's top court. I've been joined by three very special guests, Vaibhav Agarwal representing the BJP here, Mohammad Khan from the Congress Party, and none other than Soli Sorabji, one of India's most respected legal eagles. Thank you very, very much, each one of you, for joining us right there. Give me a go ahead if I can go across to Soli Sorabji, Mr. Director. Okay. Mr. Sorabji, thank you very much for joining us, sir. I have to ask you, the Collegium met today and they've decided to not just reiterate Justice K.M. Joseph's name for elevation to the Supreme Court, they have also decided to consider names of the High Court judges for elevation as judges of the Supreme Court. Send some more names and that's what will be done in the next meeting. Is this a compromise or is this a reassertion of Supreme Court Collegium's authority on appointment of judges? Mr. Sorabji, could you hear me?
Sorry? Yeah.
Mr. Sorabji, my question is that the Supreme Court Collegium has decided, to send the name of Justice K.M. Joseph again, but it will also be sending other names of judges from other high courts for elevation. Is this a compromise or is this assertion of its authority, sir? Okay, I think there's a problem with Soli Sorabji's line. I will go across to the politicians on the show there. And Vaibhav Agarwal, let me begin with you. The Supreme Court is clearly telling the government of the day and is telling the politicians, this is our choice, this is what we will go with. In fact, we will also be sending you more names. There has been a huge political outcry on how the government of the day and the minister did come on record to say that this was done on the seniority basis and all of that. The Supreme Court isn't buying that argument quite clearly.
Ma'am, good evening. And you know, I'm very, very astonished, and I'm actually not astonished. You know, let me rephrase myself. I'm not astonished at the political outcry in the country today at all, because if my government was to plant a tree today and say that let's save the environment by getting some green in, there'll be a political outcry. So I won't get bothered about it, won't get bogged down about it, we'll keep working. Now the Supreme Court telling us that we are standing by Justice Joseph, and it's a welcome move by the Collegium. We don't have a iota of doubt that the Collegium could be biased at all. And to rest all the rumors that the government is on loggerheads with the Collegium, no, we are not at loggerheads with the Collegium at all. In fact, the government does their own job, which the Constitution empowers the government to do so, and the Collegium does their own job, which of course the Constitution and the powers of the Supreme Court judges, the Collegium allows them to do so. Now we also welcome the Collegium's move very, very graciously, that we will recommend more names. And this also, you know, there's an underlying statement here that when our law minister came out and said a statement that they want the law ministry wants a balanced approach in the judges' appointment in the Supreme Court. I think we showed our level of commitment by getting the first lady lawyer elevated as a Supreme Court judge in the history of not just independent India, in the history of India.
That's not the question.
You know, so
no.
Yes.
Vaibhav Agarwal, that is not the question. Vaibhav Agarwal, give me a second. That is not the question. The question and the discussion is not about Justice Indu Malhotra. We have the highest regard for her. The question is about the Collegium and what it's trying to do here. Mohammad Khan, I will come to you, and while you're beaming quite effectively, this isn't a victory of sorts. The Collegium has only arrived at a consensus. They haven't yet referred the name, so to say. If they were really asserting the authority and if the government of the day was really on the dock, they should have simply referred this name and they could have followed up other names at a later date. Why hold Justice K.M. Joseph's name here?
The reason why I was a little amused at what my dear friend Mr. Agarwal was saying is because he is laboring under a fundamental misapprehension as to how judges are appointed in our country. Webber, the Supreme Court has on 3 occasions, once in 92, once in 93, and then as per a presidential reference under Mr. Vajpayee in 1999, clarified that you, the central government, have no role to play, none whatsoever. So what you're doing here, my dear friend, is you're making a virtue out of a necessity. You didn't appoint Indu Malhotra. You didn't even select her. You had no role in the process. You were a rubber stamp. Please do not enhance your inherent value. Number 2, forget the Congress, Supriya. For a minute, forget, because he will say that we are making it political. Let us look at the statements made by erstwhile eminent justices, former CJI Justice Lodha, former CJI Justice Thakur, former Chief Justice of the Delhi High Court, one of the most respected jurists, Justice A.P. Shah, who have written fearlessly about the crisis the Supreme Court is facing. Let us talk about the 4 senior-most judges who went and met the Chief Justice and told him that if you do not send the name back, it will be a very low moment in our history and the independence which we have fought for. There is no statute, Supriya. Let me clarify this as emphatically as I can. There is no statute, there is no law, there is no precedent which allows the central government to arrive at random criteria for the selection of judges. That criteria does not exist. The central government doesn't have the power. If they were to have that power, they would be quoting that section at you like they were doing when the Vice President rejected the impeachment motion. And also there's the slippery slope argument. Today, if the government prescribes these criteria, and you know what the criteria is, Supriya, that he's not the senior most judge. Tomorrow they'll prescribe other criteria. It is not their job. They do not have this power. That's all, Supriya. That's my opening statement.
I will exactly point out that point. I know you made your point there, but Vaibhav Agarwal, that's a valid. I'm coming to you, Vaibhav Agarwal.
Just a line.
Direct, contest between you and Mohammad Khan. I am coming to you, Vaibhav Agarwal. I'm coming to you. Let me phrase my question. You can keep responding to that, but I will quickly phrase a question as well. The point that the central government made was that Justice Joseph stood at number 42 in the seniority of High Court judges, and there were 11 chief justices of different High Courts who would be senior to him. Now that argument, even when it was made, had no water in it. It had no standing, because when Justice Deepak Gupta, who was elevated in February 2017, there were 45 judges of the High Court more senior than him. And today, by agreeing in principle to recommend the name and reassert the name of Justice K.M. Joseph, the Collegium has made the government appear in an extremely embarrassed position. They are not buying the seniority argument because that was never true. It was a very flimsy ground to reject his candidature for. Will you agree with me, Vaibhav Agarwal?
Sure. No, I beg to differ, and it's good to have differences. Let's agree to disagree for a moment here, because I won't contest what my learned friend and my learned counsel, Mohammed and I are good friends, by the way. So what Mohammed says, of course, we belong to different ideologies, but the technical point that he makes, that the government may just have a rubber stamp role to be played in the appointment of the Supreme Court judges, that's subsequently enough to prove my statement saying that the government definitely has a role to play, because if the rubber stamp was not there under a provision of a constitution, and I will not get into the merits of it, I will not get into the technicalities of it. This is a debate on the subject, not on the technicalities. So the rubber stamp itself grants the authority of the government to recognize the one moment. So that's the idea of the rubber stamp, first of all. So the second point being that I beg to disagree on the seniority part of it. If our law ministry is making a statement on the seniority, then there may be enough data that they are holding to hold on to that argument. And it's not just the seniority that the law ministry has argued about. The law ministry has also at some point in time argued about, very simply put, has argued about too many judges from a particular state. And of course you would respect this, that the law ministry is empowered to of course look into the balance of equation here, and the judges distribution needs to be equal so as to represent the entire country in an entire representative format. So I think it's justified for the law ministry to say that, and as long as the rubber stamp is still existing, it's still a rubber stamp, it's still under an authority granted to the law ministry under the constitution, and I wouldn't get into the technicalities of it, for sure.
Okay, you know what? I'm just going to go across to Soli Sorabji, and I hope my audio is finally reaching him. And Mr. Sorabji, what do you make of the Collegium? And there is a broad consensus within the 5 judges now that the name will be resent. The name will be recommended once again. Is this embarrassment for the central government that had pointed to reasons like seniority by rejecting Justice K.M. Joseph's name?
No, there is no question of embarrassment. The government is the largest litigant and it certainly has a voice, though not a veto. So when government sends its reservations or its misgivings about a certain name, the Collegium will consider it. And the Collegium finds no merit in the government's objections or reservations, then the Collegium should reiterate its recommendation. And after it reiterates its recommendation, the government is bound. That's the law. There's no question about it. And they should, and I think the Collegium has reiterated, I don't know the latest, but I believe they have. If they haven't, the earlier they do, the better.
But do you believe the Collegium should have sent his name immediately? Why arrive at a consensus and then also say they will discuss other names that will be sent, Soli Sorabji?
No, but that's no reason to hold up the other name recommended already. That's only delaying tactics. The government's reservation about Justice Joseph was seniority, which is one of the factors, not the determining factors. If the Collegium considers that there is no merit or there is no substance in the government's reservations, in the government's misgivings, then the Collegium should reiterate, and after it reiterates, the government is bound. Why go into this and various other confuse the issue? It's very clear that's the law laid down by the Supreme Court.
Okay, Vaibhav Agarwal, I will come to you and I have a very simple question to ask you as a citizen of this country. Forget about the TV debate, forget about we are sitting on national television. As a simple citizen of this country, when Justice Indu Malhotra and Justice K.M. Joseph's name came, it took months for the government to even move on this. I mean, there was no reason for the government to keep sitting on the names that were recommended by the Collegium. It took months for the government to move on this. Do we expect a speedier resolution, a speedier decision on this when the names come in now? Because look at the glaring numbers of judges that are missing in the Supreme Court. We keep talking about justice. I mean, where will justice come from if we don't even have the adequate number of judges? And when names are being sent, why isn't a call being taken on that? Mr. Agarwal?
Right. I totally agree to you, and you know, somewhere as a citizen, to my mind, I would like to reply to the citizen saying that yes, the government may have taken some extra time on responding these two elevations, but we are humbly apologetic for it, and we are happy to correct our course in the coming times. We are still dealing with a lot of legacy issues in everything that we do. We are still dealing with a lot of criticism in everything that we do, and we are still reeling out of it, and we are trying to put a system in place which is more efficient, greased and quick and speedier, no doubt about it. So yes, I am humbly accepting our responsibility on that. However, the delay in justice is not only attributed to this, the delay in justice is also attributed to frivolous applications being moved in the court in an urgent format to be heard against the very keepers of the Constitution of India and the law of India, and for political gains. If Supreme Court, and I would urge to everyone, if Supreme Court's area and arena is not to be treated as an arena or a playground for political vendetta, then you know, a speedier justice would definitely take place. So the delay in justice is not just because there is a problem in elevation. In fact, the elevation problem, it's still much faster than before if you look at the legacy part of it. But we're still trying to speed it up, put a process in place, put a genuine thing in place. But I would urge, let's not move frivolous PILs and waste the court's time. There are other matters which are useful matters that the court can put their time onto. So let's bring together our heads and see what we can do to protect our courts better, empower them in terms of more efficiency, and see what we can contribute as citizens to them, and not move frivolous petitions to waste their time.
Okay, okay. Mohammad Khan, that criticism, even without naming you, is considerably directed at you and others like Prashant Bhushan. And there is some merit in the argument that, you know, when these PILs that keep coming in, where is the time for justice to be delivered? Why distract judges from what they're supposed to do, is the argument that the BJP is trying to make. How will you counter it? Because there is some merit in what they say.
Well, my friend Vaibhav raised 3 very important points. I would like to answer them in the order that he raised them. First, Vaibhav, you spoke about the fact that there are legacy issues. I know you will appreciate this point because you're one of the few thinking spokespersons in the BJP. You remember in January when the 4 judges came out on their own and held that press conference, they gave a letter, they put it out in the public domain. What was one of the grounds? That you were sitting on the memorandum of procedure which appoints judges for over a year. For over a year. So if there was a legacy issue, it was your legacy from a year back. Number 2, Vaibhav, this is a smokescreen. People see through why you're sitting on Justice Joseph's elevation and putting forth flimsy reasons. Justice Joseph, if he is appointed, will have a tenure till 2023. You don't want an independent judge who struck down President's rule imposed by you in Uttarakhand on the bench for that long. That's why you're manufacturing all of these artificial reasons. If I were to take those reasons at face value, let's assume for a minute without admitting that you have the power. Let's assume. If I were to take your reasoning at face value, then Indu Malhotra would automatically be disappointed because she's never been a judge. So by your criteria of seniority of judges, Indu Malhotra would never figure. Number three, Vaibhav, there's Article 50 in the Constitution. It is the only article, because you kept referring to the Constitution again and again, so I believe it is my duty as a member of the opposition to educate you on this. Article 50 says separation of judiciary from executive. The state shall take steps to separate the judiciary from the executive in the public services of the state. Vaibhav, this is the only intonation contained in the Constitution in this regard. It means you keep your nose out of their affairs and vice versa.
But
the point
my learned
is
counsel in
that
this
you
case
are trying to
abrogate
unto yourself a role. You are trying to abrogate unto yourself a role which you don't have, and you're doing it with the most. Your Article 14 is equality, Vaibhav. Please, you can't compare Article 14 here.
That's
I'm
correct.
sorry.
To bring parity amongst the citizens.
दूसरी बात मैं कह रहा हूँ कि look.
So we need to have a balance.
Mohammad Khan.
You're comparing two disanalogous sections. What I'm saying is,
no, I'm not.
Vaibhav, I didn't interrupt you while you were speaking. I'll simply conclude by saying this.
Why do you want to?
I'll conclude by saying this.
Mohammad Khan.
Listen. I'll simply conclude by saying this.
You made your point.
You have no role. You're doing this for the most sinister of reasons. And today, you have a trust deficit, a huge trust deficit, because you have lied in the Supreme Court. You fought against our right to privacy. You lied on Aadhaar. You lied on Aadhaar. And today you turn around on this channel and you play the victim and say whatever my government does will be criticized. You are yourself to blame for that.
No, 1 second. Mohammad Khan and Vaibhav Agarwal, you can't be dominating this discussion. There's Soli Sarabji also on the show, and I will go across to him. So please hold your horses, Mohammad Khan and Vaibhav Agarwal. And Soli Sarabji, the statute now really says that the government is bound by the second recommendation that will come, the reiteration that will come from the Collegium. There is enough ink being spent and enough that has been written on whether it is just a rubber stamp, what was the point of objecting, if at all. But has this episode pointed out to the deep fissures there are between the executive on one hand and the judiciary on the other? And is there politics at stake on appointment of India's judges? Mr. Sarabji.
Look, I think we are unnecessarily complicating a simple issue. I don't think anyone can disagree that as the law stands today, if the Collegium reiterates its earlier recommendations after considering the government's reservations, misgivings, then the government is bound about it. Well, that's the clear law. Then the Collegium should really reiterate soon, so that there's no time gap and no delay occurs. And the government is bound by it. What are we all complicating things? This matter and that matter. Simple thing, that's the law of the land. Follow the law of the land. The government certainly has a voice, but as I said, it has no veto. After considering government's reservations, misgivings, if the Collegium reiterates it, the executive is bound and the judge should be elevated. Why the delay? Why the embarrassment of the judge also?
Okay, quick last questions to the two politicians on the show. By discussing the appointment of judges with such a political hue, is the independence of the judiciary, is judiciary at one level being embarrassed by politicians taking sides on both ends of the political spectrum? Mohammad Khan, I'm going to begin with you because I will let Vaibhav Agarwal respond to what you say since he represents the Treasury benches. And keep it crisp, please, both of you.
Well, Supriya, we have, yes, very quickly, I do believe that our judiciary's independence is in threat, and the Congress has stood vindicated by the events of the last 3 weeks. Why is there a reluctance on the part of our Chief Justice to send back the name of Justice Joseph? By all accounts, jurists from across the country have come out and spoken about his eminence, his caliber and his credentials. The government has come up with an artificial criteria which falls apart upon closer scrutiny. It is without legal sanction. It is without any basis. No, it is an act of complete non-application of mind. The judiciary should strike it down, or this will be one of the lowest points that will go down in our judicial history. That is all I have to say about that.
You're not answering my question. By doing these, by taking a political position on this, are we embarrassing the judiciary as well? Vaibhav Agarwal, quickly respond to that because then I'll close the show after this.
Not at all.
So,
not at all. I think
sure.
political parties have a responsibility. As a principal party in opposition, we would be remiss in our duty if we did not raise this.
No, one sec. Okay. You're doing your responsibility. Vaibhav Agarwal, you do yours by closing this debate now.
Yeah. So my perspective is very simple, that we would fall short of politicizing the judiciary and pointing fingers at the very institution that instills faith and confidence in the implementation, on-ground implementation of our constitution, and subsequently protecting the rights of every citizen of this country. There is complete transparency in all the processes. The government, for the first time in the independent India's history, is not interfering in any government agency's work and allowing them to function, and that is perhaps one of the reasons why that the judges are allowed to do their jobs, because we don't want to interfere. Questioning the Chief Justice of India means a lot to me, and I would not question it. I would not dare question his integrity. He is the Chief Justice of India. He gives me justice. My Lord, I call him as I refer to him when I'm in the court. So the government is absolutely transparent. We have commitment towards delivery of justice, delivery of citizen services through each agency, be it law enforcement, be it judiciary, be it anything else, in a very transparent manner, and we completely reject the idea of political interference in the system, and we do not encourage it at all at any level. That's our humble submission on this.
Okay, but I think on that note, I've completely run out of time here. I think it's an extremely sensitive issue. It's an extremely important issue. The executive and the judiciary are two separate arms of the pillars of our constitution, and they cannot be running into each other's domain. But given the politics on this matter, I wonder if such a partisan attitude can be taken on the appointment of judges and the debate that enrages from that. Can't thank Vaibhav Agarwal, Mohammad Khan and Sodhi Sarabji enough for being a part of this wonderful discussion. Thank you very much for being with us. We take a quick breather, and up next is special programming that's coming up right here on ET Now.